It began as an ordinary October morning in 1998 in Beckley, West Virginia. The town was small, close-knit, a place where most people knew one another by name. Nestled in the Appalachian foothills, Beckley had its coal mining past, its quiet neighborhoods, its modest schools, and its rituals that gave comfort to parents raising families in a world that often felt unpredictable. October 12th was supposed to be one of those days children would remember fondly. The sixth graders of Raleigh Elementary School were heading out on a field trip to River Gorge National Park. For weeks, they had been buzzing with excitement. The trip promised a chance to see the famous bridge spanning the gorge, to walk its trails, to learn about the natural beauty and history of West Virginia. For many of the children, this was the biggest adventure of their young lives. The morning began with chatter and laughter. Parents hugged their kids a little tighter before sending them off. Some snapped photos with disposable cameras, capturing wide smiles, backpacks too large for small shoulders, and jackets zipped tight against the crisp autumn air. The yellow bus, number 27, idled outside the school. Its driver, William Bill Garland, was a man in his late 50s, dependable, quiet, known for years of safe driving through winding mountain roads. He greeted each child by name as they climbed aboard, calling out reminders to sit down, buckle in, and behave for their teachers. There were 19 children in total. They filled the seats with a mix of nervous giggles, whispered jokes, and the crinkle of snack wrappers. Teachers seated near the front ticked names off a list, confirming everyone was accounted for. At 8:12 a.m., the door hissed shut, and the bus pulled away from the curb. Parents waved, the children waved back, and the bright yellow vehicle rumbled off down the road. It was the last time anyone in Beckley saw the bus. The trip should have taken less than an hour. The route was straightforward. Follow U.S. Route 19 south toward Fayetteville, turn toward the park entrance, and arrive before 9:30. Teachers had planned a day filled with tours and picnics before returning to the school by late afternoon. At first, no one thought anything unusual had happened. Schedules change, buses get delayed, roads in Appalachia twist and turn, and traffic around the new River Gorge Bridge can back up. But by 10 a.m., park rangers waiting to greet the group grew concerned. The bus had not arrived. They called the school, asking if plans had changed. The school secretary assured them the bus had left on time. By noon, worry was creeping into Beckley. Parents began calling one another, asking if anyone had heard from their children. Some drove along the expected route, checking gas stations, rest areas, diners. There was no sign of the bus. At 2 p.m., the school contacted the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department. Deputies were dispatched along every possible road leading from Beckley to the gorge. Troopers stopped at intersections, asking motorists if they had seen a yellow bus that morning. A few drivers vaguely recalled seeing one, but none could say exactly when or where. By 4 p.m., when the children should have been safely back in class, panic had taken hold. Parents gathered outside Raleigh Elementary, some sobbing, others pacing with phones pressed to their ears. Teachers huddled together, clutching attendance sheets as if the names printed there might explain what had gone wrong. That evening, the sheriff gave his first press conference. His words offered little comfort. Bus 27, carrying 19 children and driver William Garland, departed Raleigh Elementary at 8:12 this morning, en route to New River Gorge National Park. The bus has not arrived. At this time, it is considered missing. He paused, swallowed hard, then added, "We are doing everything possible to locate these children and bring them home." The search began immediately. Troopers swept the main highway. Helicopters hovered over the gorge, searching for signs of wreckage along the river. Deputies knocked on doors along back roads, asking if anyone had seen the bus pass by. Volunteers gathered at the school, offering to scour every back road, every trail, every clearing in the woods. Yet by midnight, there was still no trace. No skid marks on the road. No broken guardrails. No sign of an accident. It was as though the bus had rolled off the face of the earth. The following morning, The Beckley Register-Herald ran the headline in bold print across its front page. School bus vanishes with 19 children. No trace found. Photographs of the missing children were printed underneath. 19 faces stared out at the community, smiling, innocent, frozen in time. The story spread quickly. By the end of the week, it was on every national network. Satellite trucks crowded the streets near Raleigh Elementary. Reporters shoved microphones into the faces of grieving parents. FBI agents arrived within days, taking over coordination of the search. They interviewed teachers, parents, and even the children who had ridden other buses that morning. Every possible route was driven and redriven. Drones and helicopters scoured the mountains, rivers, and abandoned coal mines. Still, nothing. For Beckley, time fractured. Life became split into two eras, before the bus disappeared and after. Parents who once waved their children off without a second thought now gripped them tightly at every goodbye. Strangers glanced uneasily at school buses rumbling down the road. The community was trapped in a nightmare, one in which 19 children and a trusted driver had vanished into thin air. And the nightmare was only beginning. When a school bus disappears on a weekday morning in a town as small as Beckley, the first question investigators ask is simple: who saw it last? On October 12, 1998, 19 children boarded Bus 27 at Raleigh Elementary. By 8:12 a.m., the vehicle was rolling away from the schoolyard, bright yellow paint gleaming under the autumn sun. From that moment forward, the timeline fractures into fragments of memory and rumor. At 8:25 a.m., a cashier at a Marathon gas station off U.S. Route 19 recalled seeing a yellow bus stopped at the intersection. She remembered it clearly because it was unusual. Buses typically did not idle there during morning runs. The driver looked older, gray hair. Kids were looking out the windows, waving, she told deputies. I thought it was odd, but then I figured maybe they were waiting for traffic to clear. Her description matched William Garland, the longtime driver of Bus 27. But investigators noted a problem. The station was not directly on the route to New River Gorge. For the bus to be there, it would have had to turn off the main road. A small detour, but one unexplained. At 8:40 a.m., a long-haul trucker named Frank Dalton reported passing a school bus near the Sandstone exit. He described it as older, maybe a little dirty, but added, the kids inside looked rowdy, bouncing around. Deputies questioned whether Dalton saw the right bus. Records showed another school bus had been on that stretch of highway around the same time, delivering students to a middle school in a neighboring district. Yet Dalton insisted, I saw the number on the side, 27, clear as day. Investigators were divided. Some believed Dalton's account placed bus 27 miles off its intended route. Others thought he was mistaken. Closer to Fayetteville, at around 9 a.m., a farmer named Howard Jenkins claimed he saw a yellow bus turn down a narrow gravel road that led toward an abandoned coal mine. He was feeding his cattle when he spotted it. I know those roads, Jenkins told reporters. No school bus has any business down there. Search teams combed the gravel road, tracing it for miles. They found nothing. No tire tracks, no broken branches, no signs a large vehicle had passed through recently. Yet Jenkins stuck to his story until his death years later. By the end of the first week, investigators had collected more than 30 reports of possible bus sightings. Each seemed plausible, yet they contradicted one another. Some placed the bus on the highway. Others swore it had been seen on back roads. A few even claimed it was spotted in Fayetteville hours after it should have already arrived. The Asheville Times summarized the problem in a headline: Too many buses, too many stories. Search for truth in Beckley. Deputy Sheriff Robert Klein explained it bluntly. When a yellow bus disappears, suddenly everyone remembers seeing one. But we can't verify which accounts are real and which are tricks of memory. The result is chaos. For parents, the conflicting reports were torture. Some clung to the gas station account, proof, they believed, that their children had been alive at least 15 minutes after leaving school. Others believed the farmer, convinced the bus had been lured somewhere it should never have gone. Sarah Collins, whose 10-year-old daughter Emily was on bus 27, spoke through tears at a vigil. "I just want to know the last person who saw my baby. Somebody out there knows. Somebody saw them." As the days dragged on, rumors began to fill the void left by uncertainty. Some whispered the driver had grown confused, taken a wrong turn, and plunged the bus into the river. Others claimed the bus had been hijacked, spirited away onto back roads where no one would find it. A few even spoke of conspiracies, that the bus was hidden deliberately, that the truth was being covered up. The lack of evidence allowed every story to thrive. By the end of October 1998, investigators could not establish a reliable timeline past 8:25 a.m., when the gas station witness swore she saw bus 27. Everything after that was conjecture, unverified memory, or rumor. One FBI agent, speaking anonymously, said, "We can't even say for certain if the bus made it onto Route 19. That's how fragile the evidence is. It's like trying to follow footprints in the rain. Every trace has washed away." In Beckley, the fear grew unbearable. Parents avoided letting their children out of sight. Teachers struggled to reassure classrooms now half empty. Residents stared uneasily at every yellow bus that passed, wondering if it carried echoes of the one that never arrived. The last sightings of bus 27 were not clear memories etched in stone. They were shadows, fragments, contradictions. And in those contradictions, the mystery deepened. The disappearance of bus 27 ignited one of the largest search efforts in West Virginia history. From the moment the sheriff's office declared the vehicle missing, every resource the county could muster was deployed. But the Appalachian landscape, with its twisting roads, abandoned mines, and dense forests, was not easily tamed. By the evening of October 12, 1998, the first helicopters were in the air. Searchlights swept across the new River Gorge, illuminating sheer cliffs and dark waters. Deputies lined the guardrails of Route 19, peering down into the abyss, convinced they might spot wreckage at any moment. Dozens of parents gathered near Raleigh Elementary, refusing to leave. Some paced, clutching cell phones. Others wept in their cars. Sheriff's deputies walked through the crowd, repeating the same words: "We're doing everything we can." At 11:00 p.m., FBI agents arrived. The case had already escalated beyond the county's capacity. A command center was established inside the high school gymnasium. Maps of the region were pinned to bulletin boards, marked with red and blue lines for possible routes. Radios crackled as teams checked in from back roads and highway exits. No bus, no children, no sign. The morning of October 13th brought divers to the new river. Many believed the most likely scenario was an accident. The bus had veered off the road, plunging into the water below. Rescue boats combed the river from dawn until dusk. Divers descended beneath the bridge, searching for twisted metal beneath the surface. Nothing emerged but logs and debris swept along by the current. A volunteer firefighter, exhausted and dripping wet, told reporters, "If that bus went into the river, we'd have found it by now. Something else is going on here." On October 14th, attention shifted to the countless abandoned coal mines that pockmarked the hills surrounding Beckley. Generations of mining had left scars across the land: shafts, tunnels, forgotten roads. Some entrances lay hidden beneath brush and fallen trees. Others gaped like dark mouths at the edges of fields. Could the bus have been driven into one of them? Teams explored miles of tunnels, carrying gas detectors and ropes. They found rusted carts, collapsed ceilings, graffiti scrawled by teenagers, but no bus. Still, the idea lodged in the public's imagination. "What better place to hide something?" one resident remarked. "Those mines could swallow anything." By the fourth day, the search had become a town-wide effort. Churches opened their doors, serving food to volunteers. Farmers on ATVs rode into backcountry trails. Retired miners offered maps of shafts, long erased from official records. At night, candlelight vigils filled the town square. 19 candles were lit for the missing children, and one larger candle for driver William Garland. Hymns drifted into the cool October air, carrying both hope and despair. As days stretched into weeks, the lack of evidence birthed rumors. Some insisted they saw tire tracks leading into the forest, though investigators dismissed them as old. Others swore they heard a bus engine at night, echoing through the hills. A group of teenagers claimed to find a child's backpack in the woods, but deputies confirmed it belonged to none of the missing. Each rumor raised hopes, then crushed them. On October 20th, Sheriff Alan Brewer stood before reporters, his face lined with exhaustion. "We have searched over 400 square miles. We have deployed helicopters, divers, canine units, and ground teams. We have found no trace of Bus 27, its driver, or the 19 children on board. At this time, there is no evidence of an accident, no evidence of foul play, and no evidence of voluntary disappearance." The words struck the town like a hammer. No evidence. It was a phrase that had become all too familiar. By late October, the community was unraveling. Parents barely slept, haunted by the image of an empty bus seat where their child should have been. Teachers returned to classrooms with desks half empty, breaking down mid-lesson when they glanced at names on attendance sheets. One mother, interviewed by local TV, said through tears, "I keep expecting the phone to ring. I keep expecting to hear my son's voice, but it never comes." Volunteers began to drop out. The initial fire of determination gave way to exhaustion and despair. By the time November snow dusted the ridges, the official search had been scaled back. Helicopters no longer circled. The command post closed its doors. Deputies returned to regular patrols. The Miller case had gone cold. Yet the families of 19 children and one driver were left in limbo. No wreckage, no bodies, no closure, just the endless, suffocating silence of a mystery too large to bear. And in that silence, theories began to grow. 3 days after the bus vanished, deputies discovered a set of deep tire tracks veering off a gravel road near Prince, West Virginia. The marks appeared fresh, pressed into damp soil. They curved toward the tree line and abruptly stopped. At first glance, it seemed promising. Investigators brought in plaster to cast the impressions. The size and depth suggested a large vehicle, possibly a bus. But doubts surfaced quickly. The soil was inconsistent. Some impressions were crisp, others blurred. Rainfall had fallen the night before. Experts debated whether the tracks were 3 days old or 3 weeks old. The sheriff told reporters, "We cannot confirm these tracks belong to Bus 27. The evidence is inconclusive." For the families, inconclusive was unbearable. For conspiracy theorists, it was fuel. In late October, a hunter reported finding a shard of yellow-painted metal and what appeared to be a broken side mirror deep in the woods near Oak Hill. Deputies collected the items and sent them for analysis. When results came back, officials announced that the paint did not match the school district's fleet. The mirror, they claimed, was from a construction vehicle, not a bus. But rumors spread that the mirror had, in fact, belonged to Bus 27, and that the truth was being withheld to avoid panic. A former volunteer searcher told a local paper, "You don't just find a school bus mirror in the woods. Somebody knows more than they're saying." Perhaps the most heartbreaking clue came from a fisherman along the New River who discovered a child's lunchbox wedged between rocks on the riverbank. It was decorated with cartoon characters and partially rusted shut. Parents of the missing children were shown photographs. One mother thought it resembled her son's lunchbox. Another swore it was identical to her daughter's. But the box was too corroded, the colors too faded, to confirm definitively. The sheriff's office announced, "We cannot establish a direct link between this item and the missing students." Still, the lunchbox became a symbol. Families clung to it as proof their children had been near the river. Others dismissed it as coincidence. Online, the image spread with captions, the only trace. Attention soon turned to William "Bill" Garland, the driver. For 30 years, he had ferried children along winding mountain roads without incident. To most, he was reliable, even dull. But after the disappearance, deputies searched his home. What they found unsettled many. A handwritten journal, filled with notes about bus routes, local landmarks, and cryptic thoughts. One entry read, "Sometimes these mountains swallow things. People, cars. Makes you wonder if the roads are where they lead, or where they end." Another entry, "Field trip next week. 19 little voices. Feels heavy somehow." Investigators stressed that Garland's journal contained nothing criminal. His family insisted he was a reflective man, prone to poetic musings. But for parents already raw with grief, the words sounded ominous. A father of one missing boy said bitterly, if he thought something was wrong, why did he drive them anyway? As more witnesses came forward, the timeline grew less clear. One motorist swore he saw the bus on Route 19 at 8:45 a.m. Another insisted it turned down a back road at 9 a.m. A third claimed she saw children inside, waving after 9:30 a.m., a time when the bus should have already arrived at the gorge. Investigators tried to piece the accounts together, but they overlapped, contradicted, and collapsed under scrutiny. FBI agent Mark Hensley remarked in frustration, "We don't have a timeline. We have 30 versions of the same morning, and none of them agree." Hope flickered briefly when officials reviewed traffic cameras near the new River Gorge Bridge. If Bus 27 had crossed, surely it would appear. But the footage was missing. A malfunction, officials claimed. The camera covering the northbound lane had failed that morning. Technical error. Bad luck. For locals, it was more than bad luck. It was a conspiracy. "The one day we needed those cameras," one resident fumed, "and they just happened not to work? Don't insult us." Weeks later, in early November, residents near Beckley reported hearing an engine late at night. One described it as a low rumble, like a bus. Deputies investigated, but found nothing. Others recalled hearing children's voices in the dark, though no children were nearby. These accounts, unverifiable and ghostly, were dismissed by law enforcement. But they lingered in the community, haunting whispers that refused to fade. By the end of 1998, the case was drowning in contradictions. Tire tracks that might have been too old, a mirror that might not belong, a lunchbox that might not matter, a journal that might mean nothing, a camera that failed at the worst possible time. Each clue seemed to offer a glimpse of truth, only to dissolve under scrutiny. The sheriff, cornered by reporters, admitted, "We have evidence, but none of it connects. None of it gives us answers." For the families, that was worse than nothing. Evidence teased them with hope, then betrayed them with doubt. And in that confusion, theories began to take root. Theories darker and stranger than anyone could have imagined. Понял тебя. Тогда я соберу весь оставшийся сценарий, главы 5 и 10, в единый поток, без заголовков, чтобы у тебя получился полный чистый текст для озвучки. With no bus, no bodies, and no definitive evidence, the case of Bus 27 quickly turned from a search into speculation. Law enforcement, journalists, and families were left to wrestle with the same haunting question. What happened on that road between Beckley and New River Gorge? The simplest theory was also the one most parents clung to in the early days. The bus had suffered an accident. The Appalachian roads were narrow and twisting. Guardrails were old, some missing entirely. If the driver lost control, the bus could have plunged into a ravine or river. The New River Gorge itself was over 1,000 feet deep in places, with countless tributaries and hollows. But weeks of searches turned up no wreckage, no broken guardrails, no oil slicks in the water. One rescuer put it plainly, 20,000 pounds of steel doesn't just vanish. If that bus went over a cliff, we'd have seen it. The lack of physical evidence made the accident theory harder to sustain. As the search dragged on, suspicion fell on William Bill Garland, the bus driver. He was trusted, experienced, and had driven the same route for decades. But his personal journal unsettled investigators, especially his cryptic notes about the mountains swallowing things. Some suggested Garland deliberately drove the bus off course. Others argued he might have suffered a medical emergency, disoriented and confused. Yet his medical records showed no serious conditions, and no one could explain how an experienced man could take 19 children and vanish without leaving behind a single clue. Garland's family defended him fiercely. Bill loved those kids, his sister told the press. He treated every one of them like his own grandchildren. He would never harm them. Still, the unanswered questions about his final decisions made him a figure of quiet suspicion. The most chilling theory was abduction. Could the bus have been intercepted on a back road? Some pointed to the farmer's account of seeing a bus turn toward an abandoned coal road. What if it had been forced there, at gunpoint? Skeptics countered that hijacking a full-size bus in broad daylight was nearly impossible, without someone noticing. Yet the possibility lingered, especially with the notebook's haunting words discovered years later. The abduction theory suggested careful planning, a vehicle large enough to move the children, a secluded place to hide the bus, and perhaps multiple people involved. The failure of the traffic camera near the new River Gorge Bridge fueled another theory, a cover-up. Some residents believed authorities knew more than they admitted. Why had the one camera that could have confirmed the bus's passage failed at the critical moment? Why were certain clues, like the supposed mirror, dismissed so quickly? Sheriff Brewer rejected the idea outright. There is no cover-up. We're as desperate for answers as the families are. But once suspicion took hold, it never fully disappeared. Each theory held weight, but none explained everything. If it was an accident, where was the wreckage? If it was the driver, what was his motive? If it was abduction, how could it be carried out so cleanly? If it was a cover-up, what was being hidden, and why? Theories gave shape to fear, but they could not bring closure. By the end of 1998, Beckley was left with endless speculation and no proof. As one FBI agent said quietly to a reporter, "We don't have theories anymore. We have questions stacked on top of questions, and the answers are buried somewhere we can't reach." When November came and the official search for Bus 27 was suspended, Beckley was left in a kind of limbo. The yellow ribbons tied to mailboxes and fences faded under snow and rain. The gymnasium that had served as a command post returned to basketball games. But for the families of 19 children and one trusted driver, time froze on October 12, 1998. By the fall of 1999, a year had passed without answers. On the anniversary, families gathered at Raleigh Elementary. A stone monument had been placed in front of the school. 19 small names etched in granite, and one larger name beneath them, William Garland. Parents lit candles and prayed. Teachers spoke about the children's laughter echoing through hallways that now felt too quiet. Some parents refused to accept the word memorial. One mother said softly, "This isn't a memorial. It's a promise that they're coming home." The years that followed were filled with false leads. In 2000, a fisherman reported seeing something metallic beneath the new river. Divers checked the area. Nothing. In 2001, a rusted bus was discovered in Kentucky, deep in an abandoned quarry. Hopes soared until investigators confirmed it was a junked mining bus, decades old. In 2002, a caller from Ohio claimed to have seen several children matching descriptions of the missing at a rest stop. The tip led nowhere. Each time, families rushed to believe. Each time, disappointment cut deeper. For a while, the national press kept the story alive. True crime shows aired specials with titles like The Vanished Bus and 19 Seats Empty. Journalists speculated endlessly, piecing together theories from scraps of evidence. But as the years passed, the headlines shifted to new tragedies. The satellite trucks stopped coming. The Beckley Register-Herald still ran anniversary pieces, but the stories grew shorter, tucked deeper inside the paper. In Beckley, the absence was everywhere. At high school graduations, 19 chairs sat empty in 2005, a silent tribute to the classmates who should have been there. At church services, prayers for the children were still spoken, long after hope had faded for most outsiders. Yet the silence wore people down. Some families moved away, unable to pass the empty bus stop every morning. Others stayed, clinging to the belief that one day a phone call would break the silence. By 2010, the disappearance of Bus 27 had shifted from tragedy to legend. New families moved into Beckley and heard whispers about the bus that never came back. Teenagers dared one another to walk the old roads where it had last been seen. Folklore began to mix with fact. But for the parents, there was no legend, only grief that time did not dull. Every October 12th, they returned to the monument at Raleigh Elementary. 19 names, one driver. 19 lives that should have been lived. For over a decade, silence ruled. Until one fall morning years later, when a discovery shattered the stillness and brought the nightmare back to life. It began with a local hunter named Travis McNeil. On October 9th, 2013, he was scouting for deer near the edge of the Monongahela National Forest, almost 50 miles north of Beckley. The forest was dense, layered with years of fallen leaves and undergrowth, a place where sunlight struggled to reach the ground. As he pushed through brush toward a clearing, he noticed something strange beneath a tangle of branches and moss. At first, he thought it was just another piece of rusted farm equipment, not uncommon in the hills. But when he cleared away debris, his breath caught. It was metal, painted yellow. McNeil later told reporters, "I knew that color. Everyone in West Virginia knows that color. It was a bus, or at least what was left of one." Deputies and FBI agents secured the site and began clearing away brush, fallen logs, and soil that had accumulated over the years. What they revealed was chilling. A vehicle frame, rusted but unmistakably once part of a school bus, lay half buried in the earth. Sections of yellow paint clung to its sides. The roof had collapsed inward. Windows were shattered or missing entirely. Nature had nearly consumed it, as if trying to erase its existence. And stenciled faintly on the side, barely visible through rust and moss, were the numbers, 27. The bus was found miles from any paved road, at the end of a disused logging path long overgrown. To reach it, investigators had to hike 2 miles through thick forest. How a full-size school bus ended up there without being spotted earlier was baffling. When investigators pried open what remained of the doors, they expected to find answers. Instead, they found silence. The interior was gutted by time and decay. Seats were rusted frames. The floor was littered with leaves, dirt, and animal nests. No human remains were visible. No backpacks. No clothing. Nothing that could prove 19 children and one driver had ever been there. But in the driver's seat, wedged beneath collapsed metal, they found a single object, a cracked pair of glasses. Later, William Garland's daughter confirmed what many already suspected. "They were my father's," she said. "He never went anywhere without them." The most haunting discovery came 2 days later. While sifting through soil around the bus, a forensic technician uncovered a small spiral notebook, its pages waterlogged and warped. Most of the writing was illegible. Ink had blurred into blue stains, but a few words survived. On one page, "We are not on the right road." On another, "Don't open the door." The final line, "They are outside." Experts compared the handwriting to samples from several of the missing students. The closest match appeared to be a boy named Mark Reynolds, age 12. His parents wept when shown the analysis. "That's his slant. That's how he wrote his R's," his mother said. The FBI cautioned against certainty. Damage made exact attribution impossible. But the possibility that the words belonged to one of the missing children struck like lightning through the community. News spread instantly. Satellite trucks, once again, rolled into Beckley. Headlines screamed across the country. Bus 27, found in forest. Mystery deepens. Families rushed to the sheriff's office, desperate for details. Some clung to hope that the children might have escaped, lived, or been taken elsewhere. Others broke down at the thought that their children's final moments might be recorded in the notebook. At a press conference, Sheriff Brewer spoke with visible strain. The discovery of this bus confirms what we have feared for years. Bus 27 did not simply vanish. It was taken somewhere remote and hidden. At this time, we cannot confirm the fate of the passengers, but we will not stop until we uncover the truth. The discovery raised more questions than it answered. How had a bus been driven so far off the main route without notice? Why were no remains found inside? Who wrote the notebook entries? And who were they? If the bus was hidden deliberately, who was responsible? And how had they escaped detection for 15 years? The families of the 19 children were torn between relief and anguish. Relief that the bus had finally been found. Anguish because the discovery came with no closure, no bodies, no answers. One father spoke bitterly. "We waited 15 years for this, and all we get is a rusted bus and more questions." The discovery of Bus 27 should have ended the nightmare. Instead, it reignited it. The wreck of Bus 27 was hauled to a secure facility in Charleston. Forensic experts examined the corroded frame, measuring every dent and fracture. Initial reports suggested no catastrophic impact. The undercarriage was intact. The sides bore no signs of high-speed collision. The bus had not plunged off a cliff or been swept into a river. Instead, it looked as though it had been deliberately driven into the forest and left there. The cracked pair of glasses were confirmed to be Garland's. The spiral notebook was treated like sacred evidence, and specialists at a federal lab used infrared imaging and chemical treatments. 3 fragments remained clear. We are not on the right road. Don't open the door. They are outside. Geologists studying the soil around the bus found troubling signs. Layers indicated disturbance, not just from the late 1990s, but again, years later, as if the earth had been dug or shifted. Could someone have returned to the site after the initial disappearance? Officials offered no clear answer, only the possibility that erosion had mimicked human activity. Perhaps the most devastating outcome of the analysis was what was missing: human remains. Despite careful sifting through soil, despite combing the bus interior, no bones, no teeth, no fragments of clothing were found. Even in harsh conditions, even after decades, we would expect to find something, forensic anthropologist Dr. Elaine Foster explained. The complete absence is extraordinary. It suggests either removal or concealment beyond what nature alone could achieve. The bus showed no crash damage, but no clear signs of mechanical tampering. The glasses proved Garland was present, but nothing indicated what happened to him afterward. The notebook revealed fear, but not the identity of they. The soil suggested disturbance, but erosion could not be ruled out. The families were left with the cruelest kind of evidence, pieces that raised more questions than they answered. At a town hall meeting, a father of one of the missing stood and shouted through tears, "You have the bus, you have his glasses, you have their words, and you still tell us you don't know what happened? How much more do you need?" The sheriff had no reply. The wreck of Bus 27 should have brought closure. Instead, it tore open old wounds and resurrected every theory that had haunted Beckley for 15 years. Some saw the bus's location as proof of abduction. "It didn't drive itself into the forest," one investigator admitted. "Someone guided it there." Others pointed to the driver. William Garland's broken glasses were proof he'd been in the seat, but had he been complicit or another victim? The cover-up theory grew louder too. Why had the site remained undiscovered for so long? Locals whispered that law enforcement had missed it on purpose, or worse, hidden it until the timing suited them. Officials dismissed such claims, but trust was already broken. And then there was the accident theory, clung to by those who could not bear darker possibilities. Perhaps the bus had taken a wrong road, broken down, and the children wandered away. But that theory collapsed under the weight of the notebook's final line. They are outside. Each version carried fragments of truth, and none could explain everything. Bus 27 was found. The children were not. And in that absence, imagination fills the void. One reporter wrote, "The forest is quiet now, where Bus 27 was found. The rusted frame still sits in evidence storage, its yellow paint flaking, its windows hollow like empty eyes. Forensic tape has long been taken down, but the questions remain suspended in the air like mist over the Appalachian hills. In Beckley, life has continued in fits and starts. The elementary school still stands, though the laughter of children seems fainter. New generations of students pass by the granite monument every morning, reading the names of classmates they never met. Some pause. Some whisper the names aloud. Others hurry past, eager not to think too hard about the bus that never came back. For the parents, time did not heal. Many still live in the same houses, the same rooms, with bedrooms frozen as they were in 1998. Posters on walls, toys neatly lined on shelves, clothes hanging in closets that have not been touched in decades. Their grief is not loud anymore. It is silent, heavy, like the absence of footsteps in a home once full of them. Reporters occasionally return on anniversaries, asking the same questions in new words. Do you still have hope? What do you think really happened? Parents answer as best they can, but the truth is always the same. They don't know, and the not knowing is worse than any answer could be. The wreck of Bus 27 proved one thing only, that the children were taken off their path. Everything beyond that remains speculation. Accident, abduction, conspiracy, theories without closure. The notebook, water-damaged and fragmented, is the closest thing to testimony, and its final words echo like a voice carried by the wind through the trees. They are outside. Even now, hikers in the Monongahela forest claim to feel uneasy near the site. Some say they hear the faint creak of bus doors in the distance, or laughter carried strangely on the wind. Most dismiss it as imagination, but the feeling lingers, a reminder that some mysteries never fade. The disappearance of 19 children and their driver is no longer just a tragedy for Beckley. It is a shadow on West Virginia's history, a wound that time has not closed. Every October, candles are lit at the monument. Parents, now older and grayer, still gather, their faces illuminated by soft light. They sing hymns, they whisper prayers, and they look into the darkness, hoping for an answer that never comes. Because the cruelest truth of all is not death, but silence. And in Beckley, silence is all the mountains ever gave back.